Good morning, YouTube. I am here with Josh, and today we're going to talk about the current market for supercars.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
If you're new to the channel, like I said, I'm Dan, this is Josh, and we're at the Howard, and we had this whole thing where everyone kept saying, oh my God, the supercars are in a bubble, everything's in a bubble, all the cars are in a bubble, and then everyone's like, oh, the bubble's crashing, everything's popping and coming down. Well, we're obviously in the market a lot for cars with our dealership, so we're buying and selling constantly, and we're not seeing it as a bubble. So we're gonna talk about that real quick, and we're gonna give you some examples from recent auctions. Specifically, we're gonna talk about Monterey Car Week, because I think a lot of people kind of were using that as the bellwether of, is the market crashing or not? And the funny thing is, I actually read some articles of people who were like, oh, the market's crashed, oh my God. And they cherry picked some examples. They're like, oh, look, this one car did terrible. Oh my God, the market's crashed.
I'm also gonna touch on the normal car market too, because there's a big distinction.
Yes.
Because normal car market has gone down way more than supercar market.
Let's talk about that first, actually.
Okay.
As long as we're talking about it.
Yeah, might as well. I've seen the normal cars, let's call it under $100,000. Normal car, not a Ferrari or anything.
Yeah. Not even really sports cars, just like
auction
Camrys and
auction
Kias.
prices plummeting 20, 30, 40% even on some cars, highly desirable cars. There's a lot of different reasons for that. I do have some friends that are in the car business all over the country, and from what I've heard, repossession rates are going through the roof, and the big auction houses like Manheim are basically stockpiling these repossessions because they don't want to flood the market with them and bring prices down too fast. I don't really know a whole lot about how the demand is catching up with supply as far as like the chip shortages and all that, but at least here in Austin, all the dealerships, the lots are still pretty empty, so there's still a rush for those. People are still paying over MSRP for cars. Banks are tightening up quite a bit. They were for a long time loaning like 160 to 180% LTV, which means they will loan 180% of the value of the car because people needed that much money to buy a car because they were over sticker. Well, they've cut way back on that, back to what it was pre-pandemic, which is 80 to like 120% typically. And that's also caused repossession problems because people got their heads in too deep on a brand new car a year and a half, 2 years ago when they were flush with COVID cash, and like, you know, they went out and bought an expensive car, and now it's like
paid way over MSRP.
They're screwed, you know, and the banks they're like, oh, we're not paying anymore, and the bank says, well, I guess we have to take it back, and then they take it to the auction and get what they can. At some point, the floodgates will open on that, and the used car prices will really come down, especially when the manufacturing catches back up to demand, and that'll happen at some point.
I would say that's going to be the big thing is right now, because of the manufacturing gap, it creates this supply and demand gap. And so you had where cars were going way over MSRP, and the problem is those cars aren't special to the point where it's deserved of this crazy value, right? Like the only reason it was having this extreme value is because of a demand exception or a demand gap, right?
Yeah.
So that's different than the supercar world, because the supercar world, it's a 100% optional expense. No one's buying these cars because they need to drive to work. They're buying these cars because they want to buy these cars and because they have some excess money. And so you can't compare the normal car market to the supercar market. And even then, probably like the sports car market arguably is pretty insulated from the same issues of the normal cars, quote unquote normal cars.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is obviously people started to buy more supercars in the last few years, and I think that was a lot because of COVID. People were at home, they couldn't spend their money on traveling, they had extra money, they were wanting to do stuff for themselves, to treat themselves while they're at home or whatever. And so I think that's when people started piling money into the supercars, which did create a bit of a supply gap where they snarfed up everything. But I think there's also, you're compounding that with the fact that these type of cars are never gonna be made again. Non-turbo, naturally aspirated cars, the manual transmission cars, these old school supercars that are just raw and pre-computers and all that stuff are starting to carry a premium because, again, people don't think they're ever gonna be made anything like this again, which they're not. The regulations are gonna prevent it. It's just not gonna happen. You're not gonna have big V12s in a few years. You know, they're just going to go away. The naturally aspirated V8s are going to go away. All those cars aren't going to exist new. So they want to get these cars and hold them. And that's, I think, the big difference is they're now buying these cars and they're not selling it. Versus 10 years ago, it was like, oh, I'm going to buy this car and I can go buy another car and another car and another car and I can keep upgrading my supercar. But now it's like, this is it. Like if I buy a 458, that's it. That's it for naturally aspirated V8 Ferraris, period. That's it. One of the big defining things is also the caliber of wealth to acquire these cars is different, right? Like no one's buying a supercar if they don't have an excess of money to some degree somehow. So these people are more insulated from a recession, generally speaking.
And we always like to say that people that have money are always going to have money. They're not going to lose their money. So yes, maybe they're not as willing to spend it on a supercar at the moment, which is why the sales have slowed down a little bit, but the prices are not coming down that much. They have topped off, for sure. They've topped off.
I'd say we've seen most of the prices are flat now. So like if you look over the past 2 years, prices consistently were going up. Now they're pretty flat. There are a few examples of cars which I actually think are going down. So a great example is I actually do think the 458 got too hot. I think people went too far in the extreme of, oh my God, this is it. So like when you start seeing like 20,000 mile 458s go for like $300,000, like their original MSRP, that didn't make sense. So those cars are kind of back down. Like 458s right now are kind of in the 220 to 250 range, maybe 275 for like clean spiders, and occasionally you'll find like ultra low mile examples for over 300. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, you have some crazy high mileage stuff where it's below 200, which is, you know, for a long time, most of 458s were below 200. If you were one of those people that's like, I'm waiting for the correction, I'm waiting for the crash, this is it. Like you're at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, you know, like if you're wanting the good deal, now is the time to buy the good deal. I think if you wait 6 months, it's gonna come roaring back. Because
I think you might have a couple of months to do something, but after that, it's all over. You're never going to have a chance to buy these cars at these prices again. And there's quite a few Ferraris, I think, that are undervalued, and some other Lamborghinis and maybe even McLarens that are undervalued right now. That I think, you know, we'll look at back in a couple of years and you're like, damn, I can't believe we could have bought them for that much.
So I pulled up the results from Mecum because they actually give you the dollar amounts that these cars sold for at auction. So I want to go through a couple examples. One, speaking of 458 Speciales are just going for crazy money. There was a 458 Speciale Aperta with 98 miles on it that sold for $962,500. Almost $1 million for a 458, which is insane. The MSRP on something like that would maybe be like $450,000. So that's pretty crazy. We actually went and saw this car. There was a 03 360 Spider with the F1 transmission, and the reason I wanted to use this as an example is people are like, oh my God, like the 360s are shooting up in value, and they still are. So this one sold for $126,500, and we saw it and it was not that great of condition.
No. I think the 360 is one of the most undervalued Ferraris right now. If you look at the range of what is out there, the 360 is like the cheapest Ferrari you can buy, really, unless you really go, you know, like a Mondial or something like that. But other than that, I mean, the 360 is the cheapest one you can get. You can still get a nice one for under $100,000.
Here was another 360, but this one had a 6-speed manual. It was not a conversion, it was an OE car. It was in TDF blue, so super rare, beautiful color. We saw this one again. This one was in much better condition than the red one, 25,000 miles on it, and it sold for $126,500. So that to me is a very appropriate price for that car given the OE gated box. That gives you an idea. These cars have not come down in price. That's pretty much top of the market for 360s. 456 GT, again, 6-speed manual transmission with the V12. Sold for it didn't even meet reserve. It was at $95,000, which to me is...
That's a lot for a 456.
For 456, that's a lot of money. So that's, again, showing you that the market is showing that the prices are going up. This one actually did not go anywhere near as high as I thought it should. There was a 575 Super America, which is a pretty rare car, and it only went to $250. But it's such a weird car and there was like 4 of them for sale at the different auctions. And if I remember correctly, this one had some issues.
That one had weird title problems.
That's right. Oh yeah, it
It had been in a wreck or something. and-
that's right. It was salvage.
Yeah.
So it didn't even meet the reserve. It only got to 250.
Somebody bid it to 250.
Yeah, with a salvage title.
Yeah. So
It's crazy. Oh, the 599. There was a regular 599 GTB, 10,000 miles on it. It sold for 192.5. So for those of you that have been saying, "Oh, I'm going to go pick up a 599 and
I
convert
think
it,"
it might be too late for that.
They're-
Well, to get one for a good price.
they're already expensive. The 599s are absolutely going up. They're still going up. They are not coming down at all. Just to give you another example, the 599 that was there with 11,000 miles that has an OE gated shifter was $880,000. Absolutely insane price on that.
That's crazy.
Buy mine for like less than half of the price. I'm just saying, man. There was a Countach that got, get this, a 157 kilometer 89 25th anniversary Countach, went up to 800,000 and did not meet reserve. That's pretty high. That's a very high price.
That's
tag.
high, but it also shows that these people that own these cars are still in the mindset that they're worth way more than they actually are. So that just tells you that it has cooled off a little bit.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these haven't sold. They still brought really good money, but they didn't sell. So people's expectations aren't meeting what the market is showing us.
And the last one I wanted to bring up was a 2010 Lamborghini Murcielago SV with 617 miles on it. Got bid up to $1 million and did not meet reserve. But the fascinating thing is it got up to $1 million and it didn't go to reserve. To me, shows that actually that car is probably worth about 1.2 to 1.3. And I would say the sellers knew that. And it just, that's the type of car where you have to have a very specific buyer. That's not going to be a car where like, you know, regular Joe is like, hey, we're going to buy a Lamborghini.
Well, it's also a car that got to $1 million, and the seller is like, I don't care. That the longer I hold this car, the more it's going to be worth.
Right.
So
and
he
with
doesn't care that it
617
didn't
miles
sell.
on
Yeah.
it, it's a collector's car, not a driver's car. That car is purely existing now for making money. It's not.
It's a
there.
badass car though.
It is. Dude, I spent a lot of time looking at that car. Those were some examples from Mecum. What we're seeing, with our experience, is that it is slowed. The fever pitch that existed 6 months ago is gone, but the prices aren't crashing. They're not going to come down some crazy amount. I would say maybe they're going to come down 10% at most from the peak. I would say most of them aren't even come down 5%. So like the examples of the 360s and the 599s, they're not coming down. They're actually going up. They're still going up. They're not slowing
I
at all.
think the 430s too are
430s
bottomed out.
Yeah, 430s seem to be about at the bottom. They kind of came down a little. Like I think we saw those soften like just a touch, but they're about like I think those are gonna start roaring back too. Anyway, all that's to say, I don't think that you have to have this panic. I think also if you've been wanting to buy, now's a good time. I think this is probably about as good as it's gonna get for a while. Maybe you've got a couple months to pull the trigger, but I wouldn't wait too long.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to wait. If you wait, you're going to end up paying more. So find the car that you like, find the options you like, and just go for it. Like trying to time the market, you can't do it. You can't time the market, straight up.
Yeah. If you could predict the future,
Yeah, if you could predict the future,
we'd all be rich.
Yeah, we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
So anyway, that's it. If you guys want to support us, please like, share, and subscribe. Check out our website, normalguysupercar.com. There you can buy parts and services for your car. And of course, if you're interested in buying any of our cars, go check out NG Supercars, or better yet, email us, sales@ngsupercars.com. That's going to do it for this video. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to do a lot of cool car stuff. You're going to want to stay tuned. It's going to be sweet.